If you're a business owner or a digital marketer, you've probably heard about Apple's iOS 14.5 privacy update a lot over the last year. And you might be concerned, wondering how exactly is this going to affect your ability to reach your customers on Facebook? And now, suddenly it's here. The update will be available Monday, April 26th. There's been a lot of speculation out there about what this will mean, but we have some answers. Today, our Director of Paid Social Client Services at Logical Position sits down and answers everything we know about this update. Our team has been researching and preparing for this update for months and talking it over with our partner manager at Facebook. Today, we'll answer the questions of how this will affect advertisers, how many people we expect to opt in, how this will affect tracking and reporting, and of course, the all-important question of will paid social still be an effective method of advertising going forward? Timestamps are in the description below if you need them. Let's jump in.
My name is Nick Zada, Senior Account Manager with Logical Position, and I will be discussing iOS 14 and Apple's new app tracking transparency framework with Logical Position's Director of Paid Social Client Services, Emma Hushka. Without further ado, I've got some important questions here. First off, how would you explain this update to someone not familiar with cookies and digital advertising tracking?
Great question, and it is pretty convoluted, so I'll do my best to explain it. Particularly to Facebook and Instagram, there's a snippet of code on the back end of clients' websites across the web everywhere that is able to track the user's activity on the website and sends then an anonymous communication back to Facebook about that user's activity. But again, it is anonymous. There's not a name associated with that. It's just the activity is sent back to Facebook on events and signals that are happened or triggered on the website. And that data is then collected by Facebook's algorithm to provide general guidelines of a population or a consumer data set to provide to advertisers to have targeted advertising and targeted audiences.
With that in mind, being able to track people, how does the iOS 14 privacy update affect advertisers?
Since a lot of that data, again, is used for advertisers to use to provide highly targeted ads to consumers, this impact with consumers that do choose to opt out of that tracking will impact the accuracy of audiences and the data that clients have and advertisers have on consumers, since the consumers will have the option. So for those users that do opt out to not have their data tracked, that data will not be sent back to Facebook. So Facebook will have less information about these audiences, which again will make those audiences that advertisers use for targeting not as qualified and using less data points for those users that opt out. And then with that, which I know we're going to get into, the changes to attribution and changes in response that Facebook is making also impacts the performance and the metrics and information that advertisers will get from their advertising efforts.
With the amount of people that are really kind of looking to have their data private, I mean, what are we anticipating for the opt-in rate for consumers in this new update?
Based off of the data we have and similar type prompts that have been enabled in the past by Apple is kind of 50% what we're anticipating on our end.
So about half.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit in considering that. I mean, what could we see in terms of performance shifts? Could this change the tracking and reporting on conversion data? Are we looking at conversion windows changing? Realistically, what does that look like?
There's been a lot of information going around, some speculation, some confirmed by Facebook. So I'll do my best to kind of navigate and explain that. But it will have a lot of impacts to, of course, performance based off of losing half of that data. But it does have some pretty large impacts on Facebook's attribution, which is kind of the more direct impact that we think advertisers will be seeing and how we're responding on our end, since we will be losing the data for estimated about 50% of consumers. Naturally, that would have an impact then on, if there were purchases by those users that opted out, Facebook will no longer have that data. So if advertisers used to seeing a certain return on ad spend or a certain number of purchases for their campaigns, likely half of that would no longer be available. One thing to keep in mind too is that although the audiences will be somewhat less effective because of some of the data points that are going to be lost, campaigns are still going to be effective. It's just that data that Facebook has been able to provide to show the impact of advertising is, again, being impacted. Some of the larger changes, as I mentioned, are around attribution. So Facebook historically had a 28-day attribution window. So with their reporting tools, you were able to look back at the last 28 days and see reporting, purchases, conversions for someone that clicked or viewed your ad in the last 28 days. That's actually already changed. That changed about over the last month or so to a 7-day attribution window. And then recently we received confirmation from Facebook that once the iOS 14 update is live on what is been announced as Monday or during next week, Facebook will actually not have reporting metrics for any users that opt out of the prompt. Previously, Facebook had announced that advertisers would still have some data from the opt-out users. It was likely to just be one piece of information, and there's ways you could prioritize that as advertisers. But again, recently announced is that advertisers will not have any of the data from the opt-out users. There are some ways, specifically the one-day click-through window, that we've been told they'll have modeled data. We're not entirely sure what that means. That's how Facebook's presenting it at this point. So we do believe advertisers and our agencies will have data to anyone that clicked on the ad in the last day, and possibly some information about users that opted out as well. So that's one window of time that might still have information again for those opt-out users, but that's kind of the only area that we believe at this point there'll be any information again on any user that opts out. So with all that being said, again, it is less information and less of the story, but definitely still going to be an extremely effective platform, just shifting the way that advertisers are seeing success and where their focus is with their paid campaigns.
As an agency and all the clients that we serve, you already mentioned how we're going to have to just kind of read that data differently, analyze that data differently, and then utilize that data differently. But specifically, how is the social team at Logical Position adjusting to this change as it rolls out and the data comes in?
Yeah, it's been obviously a huge thing on our agenda and priority over the last several months as we've been learning more and more. And even as I've said, some of this information's been released as of today. So we have worked really hard to understand it, which I think is one of the biggest challenges with all of this. It is a big change and again can be very technical and overwhelming, understandably. So luckily we have some really smart, amazing people in our department that have a ton of experience. We also have a premium partnership with Facebook. So we've had some direct contact with some of these updates and getting clarifying information about some of these things. So the biggest thing that we're doing obviously is just adapting, because you have to, 2021, just adapting to the changing environment of the industry. A big thing that we're going to focus on as a department and have already started to is looking at other resources outside of Facebook to get this story. So as I said, we used to be able to tell this 28-day story of how paid social campaigns were performing. And with these changes, we're going to have, again, even less of that story. So, thankfully, there's tools like Google Analytics that are going to have additional resources of the consumer's journey on the client's website and how that can fill in some of the blanks of what we're going to be missing in Facebook. We also are going to work with our clients to kind of reset some goals, and our goal performance metrics are going to shift with this change of not having that access to conversion data for those opt-out users, and that data, in general for opt-out users. Return on ad spend is going to be tougher to optimize for and to shoot for and have as a goal. So our department's, looking into different performance metric goals, such as cost per acquisition being a big one, since we'll be able to still have, a good idea of the amount of purchases based off of historical data as well that we've been able to pull for our clients over the last year. So we still kind of have a benchmark of where performance had historically been, and then while using our internal tools as well as Google Analytics to adapt dynamically to what we have available to still show the value that paid social campaigns do provide. And again, just work with clients to understand the change and how to shift to ensure they're still getting that value. One other area too that we're going to continue to focus on is brand awareness. Paid social has always been a really strong brand awareness tool, and that will continue to be extremely valuable. So ensuring our clients are also focused on that higher funnel and increasing the awareness around their brands. This is the first of a lot of changes to the industry, and we're going to continue to adapt as needed to ensure our department's still providing the best value and results for our clients.
Yeah, and to that, I think what we offer really well is that transparency and that relationship that we have with clients. And I think as long as we're kind of communicating back and forth on what we're seeing and what the client's seeing, I have no doubt we'll be able to get through this and have kind of these new goals and objectives to make our clients happy. With that in mind, when we talk about the customer privacy versus the advertisers like ourselves and whatnot, I mean, where do you see the healthy balance there of the personalized advertising that would help somebody in a way versus, hey, you have way too much data on me, this is getting a little bit creepy in a way, or something like that, to where you can kind of balance that customer privacy versus advertisers aspect?
This is a great question and something I've been thinking a lot about as a consumer and an advertiser and in an agency perspective. And I've been having a lot of conversations with, other department heads on their perspective on this. I do think it is important for that knowledge to be available and out there for consumers. It should be a right if you are using any, program or app, and education and information of how that company or that platform is using your data. As far as the balance, my perspective is, it is 2021 and technology has really evolved tremendously and really has impacted a lot of people's lives in really positive ways. I think it's natural for us as a people to be going through these transitions and phases exploring this. But I also think from the consumer's perspective that people aren't always looking at why it works the way that it does, and that it is a business for, again, specifically Facebook, Google, any advertising platform and technology. These tools are free. The internet is free, Facebook is free, Google is free, and these businesses are able to provide these free services and free tools because of the advertising. If consumers want those to continue to be free, then this is, advertising is how that is able to be done. Personally, and I'm sure people listening can think of different products, and I'm sure you can, products that you've seen on your Facebook or Instagram feed that you purchased because it was highly targeted to your interests. And because of the information and data that Facebook is able to have on users, it's that anonymous profile that Facebook and other tools are able to provide highly targeted ads. If people are opting out, they're still going to get advertisements. They just won't be targeted to them. And I've definitely gotten ads that completely missed the mark on me, and I completely ignored, and sometimes I'm frustrated. It's like, what is this? This has nothing to do with my interests.
And I completely agree. There has to be some sort of healthy balance there. And I definitely have been targeted with ads that are super relevant to me. And I've ended up purchasing things or utilizing certain services that I was looking at before they know I'm interested in that have benefited my life in a way. So certainly finding that balance. But is there anything else that you'd like to let our listeners know about this change moving forward?
The impacts won't happen, on Monday. Obviously, everyone updates their phone at different, speeds. Some people have an auto update, some people, choose to, and that's going to take some time, as well as the impacts that are, in performance impacts that the advertisers see. So it is going to be a longer rollout of some of these impacts that we've discussed.
The iOS 14 update has many marketers and businesses concerned about their future ability to target users, generate leads, and measure conversions from Facebook and digital ads. However, marketers have adapted to updates and changes in the past, moving from traditional marketing to digital and from one update to the next. We'll closely monitor the impact of the iOS 14 update and make educated decisions and recommendations when working with our clients. I'd love to extend a very special thank you to our guest, Emma Hushka. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks so much.